but I think it's an important discussion. So I think it's really good to start off by how you got into this field and really what took you on this whole interest of midlife and perimenopause and menopause. And maybe we'll start with you, Maria.
Sure. So I was kind of early mid 40s when I started to, well, probably early 40s when I started, 42, 43, when I started to recognize just palpable, undeniable changes in my body, in my mood and outlook. And so I had always been somewhat holistically minded, open-minded, and I knew that I didn't want to just go to the doctor in town that everyone went to. He was a really nice guy, very affable. Everyone loved him, but he was truly just a prescription pad writer. And I knew that I would come away with, just an unsatisfactory experience. So I sought out a doctor in New York City. He was multi-published, had a YouTube channel, and it was a better experience, most likely, but it ended up being very supplement heavy, like very test heavy, very he opened my eyes, but he didn't educate me. And so I stuck with the treatment plan, and there were aspects of it that helped, but it didn't really help long term. So I feel like when women lack education, they just don't, they're just not likely to stay with that which helps. So there were aspects to the plan that were great, and there were aspects that were not so great. And so one of the not so great aspects was, and another thing I had was pretty raging insomnia. And it was like, well, we're going to prescribe you this Klonopin on the really bad nights. You can take that. Well, it was a really small dose, so that was okay. But that small dose became kind of frequent, and I got fairly addicted to it. And I had to, wean myself off that and just find a better way. And it was at that point where I said, okay, I need to know more. There has to be more than this. This is better than the, local town doctor, but this is still so lacking in so many ways. And that was the beginning of my journey.
Nice. So then you went back to school and did all
school, and even more importantly, mentorship from those who have been in the field for sometimes decades.
Yes. I agree with that. We learn more often. Like, I feel like I've learned so much more since I finished college. So,
exactly.
What about you, Kristen?
Yeah, so my background actually was as a corporate attorney, and we had moved from the Midwest out to Boston. I stopped practicing law because I didn't take my bar with me, and just kind of dove into all things relating to my family and being a mom and raising kids and whatnot. And again, like Maria, I hit my mid-40s, early 40s, I should say. And I just felt like the wheels came off. So I wasn't sleeping. I had no libido. My skin was changing. I felt like I was constantly on that body composition fight. And I was a really highly competitive athlete. I was into rowing, and probably overtraining, and under eating and doing all the things that we do in order to kind of maintain this physique that we think we should have. But it started to manifest with the sleeplessness, with all the mood changes, cognition. I used to joke that I needed lists to lists so that I knew what I was even doing past 10 a.m. in the morning. And, Boston is sort of the hotbed of conventional medicine and research and big pharma. And I had this great doctor at Mass General, and I went to her and I said, something's wrong with me. And I think I was 42, 43. And she said, nothing's wrong with you. And I said, well, can we just check? Can we take some blood labs? And she actually refused to test me. She said, there's no reason to. You're too young. And my mom had a complete hysterectomy at 32. So I had no benchmark for when midlife changes might be coming. And, I was researching, and then I'm like, could it be Lyme? Could it be mold? Could it be mono? Like, there is something wrong with me, and I need to know what it is. And she just gaslit me and finally looked at me and said, I don't know what you think you're looking for, but you've been here like 6 times in the last few months, and there's nothing wrong with you. And so I went away thinking, I was broken. My body was failing me. Like, was it cancer? My mom had breast cancer in her 40s. And so I was just super worried. And then kind of a confluence of events. There was a health emergency with my son, and then my dad got sick. And so I started in the quest to help them, diving into health, and saw this correlation with nutrition and sort of metabolic existence, and started kind of tinkering on all of us with great outcomes. And my husband looked at me and said, you need to do something. You know so much about this now. You're changing our lives. And I said, but I need credentials. And that was coming
Yes.
from my attorney mindset, right? I'm like, just because I read a few books and studies and whatnot. And he's like, yes, but you need to do this. So I, like Maria, I went back to school. And, you know, when I first started working, it was fairly general nutrition approach and just helping people with metabolic health. But, you know, you attract who you are. And so I started working obviously with a lot of midlife women, and their complaints were similar to mine. And then it's like, well, wait a minute, you know, what is the kind of common factor here? And it came down to hormones. And so then I kind of, like Maria, started diving into, I want more training in this. And that's actually how I found Maria. She was doing a class for practitioners on some test reading. And then together we just started working and then mentoring and working with clinicians and attending medical conferences. And, you know, I think because we had both experiences, one being overtreated and undercared for, and mine being completely gaslit, we were pretty ticked off, to be perfectly frank, about how women's health is not served after midlife. And so that's why we finally said, okay, enough's enough. We're going to do this. And, you know, we're pretty salty, to be perfectly blunt. You know,
Salty's good. I like salty.
Yeah, because we want women to wake up. You know, I
Yes.
mean, it's a time of life where it's easy to dismiss this as, I'm just tired because I'm taking care of so many people, or, you know, I'm just going to be like my mom or whatever. And Maria and I are like, that's BS. You know, there is a better kind of outcome, and this can actually be the best chapter. But we have to push back. So
Yeah. I mean, all three of us have very similar stories, right? Like sometimes your experience is what pushes that passion.
Yeah.
Right. So, you know, you touched on something that I think is a great segue to talk about breast implant illness. And you mentioned this quest for almost perfection. And I understand it really, really well, because when they took out my thyroid, I was like, whose body is this? Who the hell is this person? I need to figure this out. I went on every single diet under the sun. And, you know, listen, let's face facts. Like us women, we tend to be under a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you. And I'm going to say this too. Whatever we discuss here, please do not think of it as a judgment. We are not judging, we are educating. So breast implants aesthetically, well, I do a lot of aesthetic things. I do baby Botox. I do lasers on my face, right? So, you know, I'd love to hear your opinions on this whole quest for perfection.
Well, I would say, you know, we did not, as three women in their 50s, did not grow up in the era of social media, but we're maturing in the era of social media. And so there is a lot of this perfect image that's being promoted that is being thrown at women. And at the same time, we've got, thankfully, a renewed renewed interest in health, right? People, supplements, diet, nutrition, lifestyle, movement, sleep, etc. Like all of a sudden, these are seen and accepted as valid tools to most people who are starting to not rely on big pharma. But they're all being harnessed and mobilized to the goal of anti-aging.
Yes.
And that, I think, is where we're having this problem, is that men are being told it's not okay to look 50. It's not okay to even be 60. You better present yourself publicly, image, social media, whatever, to say, you know, I am not that. And that leads women to this quest, right, of rejecting the parts of their body that change or that don't fit that image, and doing whatever they need to do in their eyes to create a better appearance.
I fall into that myself. I
And
fully
we
admit
all
it.
do to a certain degree. I think where Kristen and I look, I mean, at least I can speak for Kristen and I, Sandy, you might be naturally beautifully blonde, but we both color our hair. I just got my eyebrows done. You know, I will every year or every other year do like a laser treatment on my face.
Yep.
So I get it. And, you know, women want to look good. When we look good, we feel good. And we're not against that by any means. But there seems to be this excessive societal deluge coming primarily through social media, but through, you know, kind of Hollywood and Madison Avenue
Well, like
about
the Beverly Hills show, Real Housewives.
Yeah,
Right? You've got that. You've got
we got to give them kudos for raising awareness about breast implants. But it's just this incredible deluge to look a certain way. And so what Kristen and I see as the problem with that is that that's the focus. The focus is on how we look. The focus is not on what's your blood sugar. The focus is on how we look, the focus is not on, well, this weight around my belly really is making me metabolically unhealthy.
Mhm.
No, but I want to look good for vacation, or I want to look good for my 30-year reunion, which again, this is not bad. It stops short of the really important picture. And I say really important, like someone might push back and say, well, those are your values. Okay, I hear you. They might be my values. Maybe they're not yours. But we would ask you to think forward, think ahead. Is how you look at 50 going to be super important at 80, or is being able to carry your own groceries and being able to
Beautiful.
have a very clear-headed conversation with those you love, or perhaps even still traveling? I mean,
Right.
I hope that I can still do that.
Okay, I loved what you said there, but yes, so for me, okay, yes, I'm a nutritionist. Yes, I'm a biohacker. Yes, I'm almost 53, but for me, if my personal health has been taken away from me,
Right.
right, at one time. So I know what it's like to hit rock bottom.
Yeah.
So my gauge for all of these things, these aesthetics, is, does it affect my health?
Right.
Is
Mental
it
and
more?
physical.
Yeah.
Exactly. So for me, that's my barometer, so to
Yeah.
speak.
Your measuring stick.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I know that if I do things like we were talking about, like laser, it's not going to affect my health. What
Right.
it's going to do, it's going to help, with the collagen. It's going to help take away sun damage that, slathering baby oil in the 80s, like that damage. Well, I can't undo it. So that's what that's going to do.
Right.
Little tiny bit of Botox. I do very little, but I do it because I don't like that anger line, and now my kids can't see when I'm pissed off, right? So that's why I do it there, because I don't like it. So I don't see anything wrong with those little things. Maybe we can talk a little bit about getting into breast implants and where there can be a problem. Now, I don't know a whole ton about it. I know that you ladies are way more knowledgeable in this respect. Mine are natural and unfortunately too big for my size, but what am I going to do? So
I wish I could identify. I would have never gotten breast implants.
So maybe we can start getting into that, if that's all right with you.
I would love to. And I just
Yeah.
want to kind of dial back a little bit. So you said, you started out by saying we're talking about breast implant illness, all well and good. I love to direct the conversation away from that terminology.
Okay.
I want to be a little bit more global in how we look at breast implants. And that's because I believe that there's a lot of problems and harm, and there's a sliding scale, right? And I think what we have is a lot of women who are struggling and suffering, but maybe don't have like those very often discussed symptoms of breast implant illness. And I could say I'm in that, I put myself in that group. I didn't have mold issues and, massive brain fog. I probably had a little bit, and rashes and hair loss, and
Oh, wow.
pain, fatigue. I did not have those. I had, I started, I had them in for about 20 years. So I would say the last year or two, I had some kind of diffuse breast pain, but it wasn't like I probably could have lived with that. It was intermittent. I feel like that my overall efforts that I was doing towards my health were being somewhat thwarted. So I felt like the hormone replacement therapy I was doing, like, it was good, but could it be better? And I do feel, again, I don't have a study. So if anyone comes out and asks for a study or proof, like, this is my experience. So I don't have a study. But so
yours and many others, though, Maria, we do hear from so many women, right? Where those
so many.
health interventions that they're seeking almost have like a self-limiting,
Totally limiting
feeling on them because of their breast implants.
Yeah.
And I do want to say something else. Despite not having a study, you have education, and you now can look back on it from a scientific perspective, right? From your education. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yes, and from my personal experience, and I think people have to realize that, we don't get studies on things that are going to really produce no financial outcome. So we don't get studies on
Good point.
In fact, making women aware of the issues around breast implants would actually have negative financial effect, most likely, for the firms that make them. So, right, not everything needs to be proven with a study.
Yep.
So yeah, just to broaden the definition about just sort of like the issues around breast implants, including breast implant illness, but not limited to that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So what are we looking at here? What you mentioned a couple of things, like, you would get rashes, or you would, I need to understand a little bit
That
more.
would be
What are they?
one of the known, I think even the FDA website would list that, would list rashes, fatigue, and brain fog. But so
And hair loss.
And hair
I
loss.
had no idea about the hair loss, because I'm always going to go, well, what's the root cause of that? I actually interviewed
And hair loss is so
multifactorial.
it is. I interviewed a physician who is top 20 in the world for hair loss and restoration. And I love what he says, because there's always a root cause. Well, what is that cause? What is the breast implant doing that would cause that? That's what, right?
So my issue around breast implants is, and it's so funny, I get this. Well, let me say what my issue is. My issue is you're putting a device in the body. Okay. It's a non-self device. And when that gets inserted, it's a natural immune system reaction to, like, your immune system is like, what is this?
Mhm.
What is this? Now, some women will have immediate untoward reactions. Okay.
Right.
It's sometimes their immune system might actually be able to resolve that. Okay. But it's hard to know, because Sandy, we get this question all the time. Well, I have a rebuilt, joint. Is it the same issue? I'm like, yes, it is the same issue, but here's where I take issue with that. And again, these are just my thoughts. This is not judgment education. This is really food for thought. Is nobody needs breast implants. We could maybe make kind of like a dispensation or an exception for cancer survivors, but even they don't need them. They want them, and they want to feel whole again. And I honor that. I understand that. That has never been I was not presented with that situation where I had to have a mastectomy. So I feel my heart goes out to women, especially women who are cancer survivors, who ask me that question. But the fact of the matter is, your immune system is not different. Your immune system is not going to give you a pass because, you had cancer and now you have implants in.
Oh, yeah.
But
anything, your immune system might be a little more heightened.
Yeah,
to protect
exactly.
you against foreign objects.
Because cancer is really in part, at least, a malfunction of the immune system. So basically, it's like you get a device in the body, and it does put the immune system on high alert. And how that manifests, it could be different for every woman.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Okay. So you talked about some of the really not really specific. Like, you can have hair loss even without breast implants.
Exactly.
You can have rashes. I mean, I know that is relating to a histamine response often in women because of hormonal changes, right? So it could be that. So, what are some of the more serious symptoms?
So we'll get this one out of the way right away. Unfortunately, it's cancer. Now, I will go on record as saying it is very rare. Okay. So, like, a small amount of women can develop cancer, but it is still something that is very much known. It's so it used to be, I believe, anaplastic large cell lymphoma, ACLC, or I don't know.
So it's a lymphoma, not a specific.
ALCL.
Anaplastic large cell
Lymphoma.
lymphoma. Yes. And that is very rare, but it still does exist for sure. Okay. So just recently, I believe in early September, so just like about 2 months ago, FDA came out with another warning saying that there's other types, I believe like a squamous cell cancer and other types of lymphoma that can develop in the capsule. So what happens when breast implants get put inside the body creates a capsule around the implant, and that does somewhat help hold the implant in place. I believe, and I think, you know, we can get most doctors to say that this is the case, is that that's the immune system kind of walling off the implant to protect the body. Okay, so the FDA has now found, I don't want to put a number on it. It is a small amount, but a certain amount of cancers that are actually embedded in that scar tissue, which is called a capsule.
Yeah. So that is what it is. It's scar tissue that surrounds the implant.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And if women, you know, Maria has this experience upon explant, the doctor can show you the capsule that was formed around it. And it is shocking, to be perfectly frank.
Yeah, it's graphic and it's shocking and it's fascinating. I've always loved that stuff.
Because it's the body doing what we want it to do.
The body,
right?
It's the body doing, you know, people don't realize the body does what it does to protect us. We get a fever, it's to kill off a germ or a bacteria. We get, like, I believe,
swelling with an ankle injury. It's to bring blood to the area, you know.
And I believe, I was just listening recently, like the amyloid plaques in Alzheimer's is actually a protective response. So
right, it's not precipitating; it's actually a response. It's not, the cause. Yeah,
right.
And I do find it interesting that the cancers are actually blood cancers, like lymphatic cancers are actually blood cancers.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So it's obviously a systemic reaction.
Yeah. And these capsules, I mean, the pictures, you know, that we've seen, they're vascularized.
Right.
They are.
You know, people need to realize, and we've got, you know, microbiota in the gut, they travel throughout the body, you know, microbiota and other areas travel to the gut. Like, we have this incredibly interconnected microbiome, and it's using the lymph and blood system to move around. So you've now vascularized your breast in a whole new way, right? More than it was. It's a little concerning.
So I've also seen, and I'm not sure, maybe you can tell me if this is just, you know, sometimes you see stuff and you go, is this real? You know, where they've removed some implants and they're completely calcified, like hard as a rock.
All right. So yes, no. So the implant can have flecks of calcium on it, like white flecks. So mine had a few white flecks.
Okay.
My surgeon explained to me, and again, very conventional, but super supportive of you know, just does a lot of explants. So that's a sign of inflammation right there, that the little flecks of calcium. Now, I think what you might be referring to, I do believe implants harden, but I think what you might be referring to is called capsular contracture. And that's where the capsule, again, that's that web of scar tissue, hardens. So that's, I suspect maybe that's what you're referring to, but maybe you meant the actual implants. I don't know. I will tell you.
I've just seen videos of where they remove it and they're like hard rocks, but
yeah, I do believe that happens. Yep.
I've also had great conversations with this one physician, and I'll never forget what he told me. And he said in medical school, when he was working on cadavers, you could see so much calcification throughout the whole body. Right? You know, and that's why I'm always like, hey, just taking some calcium ain't going to help you. Like, you need
it's going to hurt because
you need to have the whole gamut to make sure it gets into the bone, not just calcium. So calcium, magnesium, vitamin D.
You actually need hormones to signal that calcium to move properly. Otherwise, you could have it go settle in your heart valve. I mean, and there's
Right.
Well,
so that's
why we often recommend women to get a coronary artery calcium score. It's such an inexpensive, easy test. Yeah. Yeah.
What is
Yeah.
that? Say that again. A coronary.
I will let Kristen say more about it. It's a little side note, but it's a good
Yeah,
one.
it's called the CAC, or
I like it.
yeah, or CAC score, and it's like 5 to 15 minutes, depending on your technician. You go in, it's kind of, you know, a quick CT scan. It's very fast. And essentially what they're looking at is, do you have plaques that have started to build up, calcium plaques in the coronary artery of the heart? It's important because it's the first process. I mean, it's not, I should say, it's a result of an immune process cascade that has resulted in these plaques, you know, settling there in the heart. But it's much further downstream than a lot of people want to realize. There were a lot of things that precipitated this. Even the development of plaques at all. We can have soft plaques that are what we consider vulnerable plaques. They're like circulating. The CAC scan is looking at what plaques have already stopped circulating and settled. Okay. But we have plaques throughout the body that could be moving around, and they are a result of some sort of immune response. So there's been some sort of endothelial damage somewhere, usually in the vasculature, that sets off this cascade, and the result are plaques. And this is why people vilify cholesterol, because cholesterol is a large component in these plaques, and people think, oh, cholesterol causes heart disease. But the reality is cholesterol is like the fireman coming to the fire.
Yes.
Cause the fire, right? He's coming to the site of an injury, a wound. The cholesterol is in the body as a proper immune response. And then this kind of cap forms. It's almost like a scab, and that becomes your plaque. And then they can be mobilized. Once they settle in the coronary artery, that's a problem, because now we've kind of got this, you know, narrowing of the pipe, so to speak. It's going to set off a whole bunch of problems. But this is why when women, particularly in their 40s and beyond, just start adding willy-nilly calcium supplements because they're interested in protecting their bones, the scary thing is that we need adequate estrogen and progesterone in order to tell the body what to do with this calcium. So women will take calcium or straight D3 without any K2. And again, all they're doing is essentially overloading the system with these components that have no signaling. They don't know where to go and what to do. And so where do they go? They go to usually the heart. So, you know, we'll tell women, like, if you come into midlife metabolically unhealthy, and or you've been supplementing for a long time with these things, we do recommend a CAC, simply because the odds are that you've already had this immune cascade, you've already developed some sort of plaques, and they may have settled already in the heart. But that's a total sidebar there.
That was a good sidebar, though. I think that's a very important sidebar, because we're talking about women's health, and we're talking about something that many women have, and that's breast implants. So, you know, even the calcification, that's something that is important to understand. For even whether you have breast implants or not. So,
and calcium plaques can travel. I mean, I have a very close friend who had calcium form in the heart. It broke off. It traveled, ended up in the brainstem, and caused a massive stroke. And, you know, this is why calcium, even on a breast tissue, is important, because it's not guaranteed that it's going to stay there.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. So this
Yes.
is where I'm going to stop and just say, work with a functional nutritionist or a functional health practitioner if you're in midlife, because they're the ones who can educate you on why you shouldn't just take calcium, not your general physician. And I say this all the time. General physicians are not trained in nutraceuticals, how to take them, when to take them, what to take, what is synergistic. I think these are really important facts, right?
Yeah, they're not
Huge.
trained in nutrition either. So yes, Sandy, I did have a few calcium flecks on the implants, and interestingly, the implants were in beautiful, perfect condition, except for the little calcium flecks. But I'm happy to report that 2 CAC scores, 2 years apart, were both 0. So,
oh, wow.
We always say that's the one time in your life you want to score a 0.
Yeah,
I'm going to put that in the show notes. Just I wrote a note to make sure I include that, just for anybody who wants to refer back.
wonderful.
So we touched on some of the milder symptoms that could look like other symptoms.
Yes, for
We
sure.
touched on the extreme side effect of implants, and that's
Cancer.
a couple of different types of cancer.
Right.
What about other things? Like, what about autoimmune diseases?
Well, so again, when you put a device into the body and you have the potential to provoke the immune system, I think that there is probably a link, but autoimmune diseases they're multifold, right? We've got gut health, we've got a genetic susceptibility, and then we have an environmental insult.
Excuse me.
No worries.
Don't worry. I'm going to make sure I cut that out. Because if I mute myself, I mute you guys too. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so the immune system is, again, it's provoked so that there's that environmental insult. So for some people, I know a woman who got a viral meningitis, and then she was shortly diagnosed with some autoimmune disease after that. It was either celiac or Hashimoto's. So there's genetic, there's environment, and then there is gut. So the environment, I believe that breast implants fall under that. Is that an environmental thing that has triggered your autoimmune disease?
Yeah, I actually just a while back, it's going to come out before ours comes out. I recorded an entire episode on autoimmune diseases. And yeah, it's like you need that perfect storm.
Yeah.
Right. And breast implants can be that little addition.
Little trigger.
Yeah.
Little trigger for sure. Yeah. And then another symptom that's super interesting. If you search breast implants and depression on PubMed, you're going to come up with a lot of stuff. Now, it's not really well known. Like, in other words, were the women depressed and they got the breast implants in to make themselves feel better? Or did the breast implants kind of make them feel depressed? Because again, the inflammation, the brain health, things like that, it's not really well known. But I know for myself, I just felt palpably happier after they were out. And it wasn't just immediately following surgery, like, yeah, this is done. It was like months and even years afterwards. And I would also just say, like, I started to feel, again, I didn't have a ton of symptoms. I did have some pain. And I was like, 20 years. And I learned so much. It became like, how can I keep these things inside of me? And, here I am going into, serious midlife, and like, well, am I going to have breast implants in when I'm 60, 70, 80? And it just felt so, it just felt so wrong to me. I was like, it's definitely time to get them out. But even more than that, even if, let's say I had them in for 10 years, I was like, I don't know. It's like, I filter my water. I buy grass-fed meat. I'm using the best of hormone replacement therapy. It's like, why the heck do I have these, toxic sacs in me?
And I can say from an objective standpoint, because Marie and I were working together as she was kind of coming to this decision and then had the explant, and then afterwards, she's like a different person, to be perfectly frank. It was a little less, and I love her, so she knows I'm going to say this with all the love in the world. She's a little less on it, like more like almost ADD prior to. And the mood, it was like, there were times where I was like, is she capable of being truly happy? Because she sort of had this limit, this fog that was always coloring even the best moments of life. And then she had the explant, and it was kind of fun to watch, because she was having this epiphany of, oh my God, I'm happy.
Yeah.
Oh, I see the world at this like brighter outlook. And it wasn't, any sort of placebo, because she didn't know that was necessarily going to be an outcome. But it was shocking to see this like motivation come back, this low mood lift, and this whole perspective shift. And, I'm not in her house and in her bed with her, but I think her husband would completely agree. And, from two people who love her, it was like, to see this shift, it was like she just shook off this cloak. And it was pretty amazing, to be perfectly honest, because she was doing all the other things
I was doing it all.
prior to it.
Now, here's a question for you. I'm not sure if you can answer it or not, but can you do all the things? Okay, let me backtrack a little bit. Can you do all these things? Because listen, I'm a big believer in biohacking. I do all the things. And in one presentation, it was so interesting because they were talking about nitric oxide. And this physician who was speaking was saying, here are the individuals who do all the right things, good diet, sleep, all of the things. And here's their nitric oxide production at midlife. And then here is somebody who does none of the right things in terms of diet. And here's theirs, but then they take and supplement with nitric oxide. And so, let me get to this. Let's say you do all the right things. You eat well, you sleep well, you do all the things that, take all the supplements that are really targeted, but you have breast implants. Okay. Can you, what's the word?
Biohack, overcome it?
Yeah, overcome it. Can you do detoxification? Can you do all the things to make it okay?
Well,
I mean, yeah, go ahead, Chris. You give your opinion.
I will, only because I have no dog in this hunt. I do not have breast implants. I considered them because I was likely going to get a prophylactic mastectomy because my mom had triple breast cancer in her 40s, and I've had 7 biopsies and high risk and all those things. And I said to my husband, if these are going to put me at risk of my kids' futures, they're out and I'm done. And, he was like, woo, we'll get some bigger ones. And I was like, newsflash, I'm not saying any. But anyway, we were able to not have to go down that road. But I will say, when we actually added, do you have breast implants to our intake form for our clients?
Oh,
really?
And we did that because we get really savvy women who work with us, and we get the whole spectrum. But when we get someone who is like you, they're on it. They know all the biohacking. They got the, hormesis going with the cold immersion, and they got the red light therapy, and they're working out and got the trainer and doing all the things. And yet they come to us and they're like, something's off. And we can educate them on HRT, and we can help them tweak their diet, and we can maybe encourage them to get a little better sleep and all of these things. They never quite achieve what should be the outcome from all of these interventions and amazing biohacking sort of things that they're doing. And many of them will say, I don't know what to do. And Maria will gently, lovingly say, this may be now the time to consider that your implants are having a negative effect on you. And I would say we've had more women choose to explant than not.
Yeah.
And
Oh, wow.
every single one of them will say, this changed my life. And they went in, some of them went into it kicking and screaming up to the moment they went into under anesthesia, almost like they were going to come to us and be like, I did this because, you guys convinced me of it and it didn't work, kind of thing. And they will all come back and go, oh my Lord, I didn't even know that I was struggling with ABC. I didn't even know that this was impacting these things. So I will just say there's no studies again on this, but from a clinical perspective, we see it so often to be the case that it's impossible to out biohack breast implants.
I agree. That doesn't mean that you can't get some gains. And, I worked on my health, and I felt good, and I felt great on some days, and I felt poopy on other days. But my point is, you can certainly still work on your health. You deserve the best, even with implants in, but you may not achieve the best. And you probably won't achieve the best. Yeah.
I'm going to say that makes actually a lot of sense. It's almost like, you go, maybe this is more extreme, but 1 step forward, 2 steps back.
Yes.
Like I feel for me, I'm always running uphill because I don't have the master gland.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but I can't do anything about that.
You're always
can't
going to operate with one arm tied behind your back, right?
exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly.
You
Yes.
can still
And
engage in all the things.
I'm still working on my own limiting beliefs because I believe that there's limiting beliefs and there's that whole side of it that's the psycho-spiritual side of it that's attached to it. But it kind of makes sense in that, when you do have that, you're maybe just simply not optimizing what you could be.
Yes.
Oh, yes. And, there's, again, I'm going to just say it. I know that there are going to be people that do not like hearing it. Nobody needs breast implants. Like people need to get knee replacements. People need to get,
They need to walk.
people need to get joint replacements. People need to get pacemakers.
People need thyroid replacement if they have
Yeah,
got a diseased
right.
thyroid. Like you
Right,
need
so, like,
certain things.
what you are dealing with is like a real physiological issue. But when you've got a woman who's got breast implants in, like, she has the choice to take them out. And I've even pushed back. Some people will be like, I just don't have the money to take it out right now. And I'm like, well, start saving or investigate like care credit or something like that.
Okay, so let's shift gears just a little bit because I think this is an important part of the conversation, mammograms and breast implants. So, I've had breast thermography done. I've had mammograms done. I still have a benign fibroadenoma in one of my breasts. It developed around the same time that I had thyroid cancer. And I believe estrogen was a big part of that. But anyway, that's another conversation, right? But what are your thoughts or research on mammograms with implants?
Yeah. So we talked about this beforehand because we do know this is controversial. I have to get a mammogram every year, and then every 6 months after that, I have a breast MRI. So, and we're talking
Okay.
like the full gold standard, whatever. And I have to do that because of my risk level and because of my genetics and personal history with my mom. So, I would say that you have to decide what it is that what outcome you're trying to achieve. If you're trying to achieve diagnostic imaging related to breast cancer, mammogram is the thing.
The gold standard. That's
you need
what they
it. Thermography doesn't even claim to be able to diagnose breast cancer. And I think that's one thing. I mean, we get it. There are many women out there who don't want the radiation or they don't want the experience, and they go for thermography. And that's not a bad decision. You just have to know what it is you're choosing. And what you're choosing is simply an alternative imaging to look at maybe some tissue changes within the breast. It cannot and will not diagnose breast cancer. You need mammography to do that. Now, if you have breast implants and you want mammography, it's kind of like you wouldn't go to, let's say, a dentist who doesn't do orthodontics for braces, right? So you don't want to go to a mammography place that doesn't have experience with breast implants because there are legitimate risks. Again, like some of the cancer stuff, they're rare, but can a poorly done mammography create a burst breast implant? Yes, it can.
Okay.
Can it create inflammation because of the pain, because of the imaging? Yes, it can. Also, standard mammography isn't sufficient with someone with those breast implants. They usually need 4 additional images that look at different angles than the standard mammography. So if you want to monitor for breast cancer and you have breast implants, choose your mammography wisely, your mammogram center wisely. If you want to just kind of as an adjunct, look for a different sort of imaging to monitor changes in breast tissue, which are also relevant, go with thermography. For many women, they need insurance. Mammography is the only one covered by insurance, right?
Yes.
So in
Same
the
here.
US, that's a huge thing. If you're cash paying and you want additional eyes on something, go with thermography, but don't skip your mammography to the extent that, you're supposed to be on a schedule or anything like that. And if you have breast implants, know that, there are certain parts of the implant can turn up white, and microcalcifications often turn up white. And so there might be further investigation that is needed, which is problematic for some women or concerning. Also, you might get shadowing to make something not show gray tissue, which can be early cancer. So, there's also going to be complications with just having breast implants and getting breast imaging of any kind. Does that make sense? That you are definitely sort of lowering the opportunity diagnostically.
Yep. That totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Because, so let's just recap. Thermography, not diagnostic, but great to see if there's any changes or patterns in breast tissue. And it's also really non-invasive.
Right.
But mammogram is really the only way you can diagnose if there's something actually there.
Right.
So
with the downside being there could be false positives, and people like me, I mean, like I said, I've had 7 biopsies. They're not fun. And now
they're awful. The core ones?
Yes.
They're awful.
I mean, my breasts look like golf balls, right? Because they've been punctured so often. And then, then for me, a breast MRI, if you've not had one, it's not a happy experience. You're face down, you have the gadolinium injection. You're kind of in this like odd body armor where your breasts are hanging down below. The gadolinium can make you feel like you've wet your pants, as well as suddenly fill your mouth with this metallic taste, and you're face down. So there's this moment when you're in the machine where you have almost a panic attack. You're pretty sure you're going to vomit or wet yourself. And, this is all in the quest of, making sure that you find this breast cancer that may or may not be there. So I totally understand why women push back. It's never a fun experience, but especially if you have dense breast tissue, it's something you better be really knowledgeable about what you're choosing and what the outcome is that it can deliver to you versus not deliver.
Okay, that's good. And the other thing too, I always have to put this in. If you work with a functional nutritionist, because I'm talking to you two, and you two know so much about this, there are nutraceuticals that are really good for breast health, but don't just go and grab a bottle of iodine.
Right.
Off the shelf and think, okay, this is all I need to do. You need to know what risks are too, and how much to take and all that kind of stuff. Because iodine is a beautiful nutraceutical that you can take if you don't get enough of it in your diet. That's great for breast tissue. I take it because it's also great for thyroid, but I don't have thyroid. So for me, I take it because of breast tissue. So, okay, thank you for that.
Can I just say one quick thing? Because you brought something up when you were talking about root cause. And, at the end of the day, whether it's hair loss, whether it's, thyroid issues, whether it's breast issues, whether it's gut issues, all of this cascade of, immune response and walling off and, DNA changing and quinone production, everything else, it starts because of inflammation. So you just said, working with a functional medicine person, there's a really low hanging fruit to enable you to follow a diet and lifestyle protocol that reduces inflammation. Like at the end of the day, if that's all you want to do is protect against the risk of autoimmune, protect against these changes, skin, anything, just, avoid inflammatory triggers.
Okay, you guys are going to laugh at this. I actually just did blood work yesterday.
Yeah.
And my CRP, so CRP was flagged. And I'm like, oh crap, why is it flagged? Oh, it's super low. I'm like, okay.
Wow.
Well, that's
funny.
So it was flagged low because I think it's here, I don't know about the measurements and the conversion between US and Canada, but I think it's 5 and up is high, and I was at like a 1. And so the lab flagged it as low. So I'm like, okay, I'm okay with that flag, right? But knowing what's going on, and I think this is good to say, go get your blood work done every year.
Yes.
Just get your general blood work done that has, we can talk about lipid panels, but because that's so annoying.
I could talk about this all day long. Yeah.
It's very annoying. But, for me, I got my lipid, I have typically higher cholesterol. And, then there's that whole factor of women who, I've only had 3 periods this year, and we're now end of October. So I'm starting to shut down. So I know that typically this happens with women in and around this time, you know, your cholesterol could go up to compensate, because it's like, hey, where's all the other hormones? They're not making them anymore.
Well, and thyroid impacts your lipids as well.
It
and you had a
does.
thyroid challenge. So
It does.
yeah.
So I'm not worried about it. But then I did see my triglycerides go up a tad. And so that's what I'm more concerned about.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So get your blood work done.
And know
people.
that standard reference ranges are based on an unhealthy population.
Yes.
Which is why Sandy got flagged, because that's an anomaly, right? Being
Yes.
uninflamed is an anomaly, right?
Oh
But-
my God, she has no inflammation. We got to flag this.
Right. But we can't normalize inflammation. And that's something that I think happens all too often. And going back to the breast implants, like at the end of the day, you know, Maria loves to say when we're low in sex hormones, default state of inflammation, you know, thyroid malfunction, default state of inflammation, gut microbiota issues, default state of inflammation, breast implants, default state of inflammation. Like it's, you know, so if anything, knowing how inflammation triggers cascades throughout the body, why would you choose your laser causes acute temporary inflammation?
Yes.
Right? Not systemic and not chronic. And that's the thing I think that people need to just get really honest with themselves about, is if you're going to put a foreign object in your body like that, you're going to have systemic chronic inflammation until they're taken out.
Yep. So let's get into explant.
Yeah.
Explant. What? Because listen, I can't relate, but if something happened, right? Like if something happened that I had breast cancer and I had to have my breast removed, and then being left with something very different than what I looked like for many years, there's a lot tied to that.
Absolutely.
So Maria, you have a lot of experience in this. So, you know, let's talk about what the risks are. What about the skin, like the stretching of the skin, and what do you do?
Well, so, you know, I don't have experience with having to have had made the decision to put in implants because of mastectomy and reconstruction. I do have the experience of having had implants in and having had taken them out. So skin really wasn't too much of a problem. I mean, my implants were moderate size, and small to moderate. So that, you know, that was, taking them out was, you know, it wasn't that much of a visual shocking change. It was, and I'll be honest, I struggled, you know, for a few months on, I don't really love the way I look anymore. But almost every time I thought that, I thought to myself, I'm healthier though. So start thinking about that. And you know what? I will say, for women that are considering explant, like I just said, I didn't like the way I looked for a few months afterwards. It kind of worked itself out. And now I kind of like the way I look, and, you know, they're smaller and not as high and lifted up and perky, but they're healthy and they're mine. And I kind of like just really appreciate the way they look now, even though, you know, it doesn't look perfect. And one is slightly bigger than the other. Probably not. I even asked the surgeon about that, and he's like, well, you know, just he wasn't 100% sure, but
I blame my kids.
there you go.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, I think again, we just like take away the how you look as the primary focus. I understand we want to look good, and focus. That's what I was able to do, and I was able to focus on, but I'm healthier and I'm happier. So they don't look like these two perfect breasts, which I personally now find that implants just look terrible. But that's because that's my new thought or opinion about it. It's like, it looks so fake and it looks so perfect, and that's just not what I like anymore. It's like, just I like the way real breasts look, even if they look imperfect. So
when they do that, do they give you a lift at the same time?
Well, I did ask about my surgeon about that, and he said, you're just really not, you don't qualify for it, because I didn't have, you know, obviously I got breast implants because I was unhappy with the way I looked, and I kind of believed like this false standard of beauty, and I needed to measure up. And so when he took them out, I just didn't have much to lift. So, but that is certainly an option. Quite a, several.
Quite a few of our clients get lifts after they get it.
That's what I'm wondering, because I think even if you don't have large breasts, many of us have breasts that are lower naturally because we breastfed or genetics or whatever.
But I will say
estrogen.
this. I will say this. I feel like, and it's really hard to remember. Sometimes I look at myself before I get in the shower and I'm like, I think I'm a little bit fuller now than I was when I had the implants put in. Like, I think I actually have more boobs now than I did. And, some people would say, well, you gained weight. And yeah, I'm not nearly as thin as I was, 25 years ago. So maybe it's a little bit of that, but also I'm on a very well-formulated hormone replacement regimen. And that brings back some fullness to the breasts. I think Kristen can attest to that a lot more than I can. And I'm a little jealous about that, Kristen Johnson. So you can now take it away.
Wait. But one more thing before we go to that. You can actually even get fat.
Yes.
So you can transfer.
Yeah. So you can get a fat transfer. So, and I definitely had considered that, but so that is not without risk. So you can, it is a surgery. I don't quote me on this. I don't believe you can do it at the same time. So
usually you have to gain some weight.
And you have to have some fat.
Yeah, I have no problem with that. I'm like, okay, we'll go with the inner thighs first, and then
and also fat transfer, it does not give you the volume that you would get with an implant. So you have to kind of be happier with a smaller, look. You're not going to get super volume.
Okay, but it's still an option.
It's an option, absolutely. But you can lose anywhere from 20 to 50% of the fat. It doesn't it needs to develop. I don't believe it needs to develop I believe a blood supply, or it needs to be fed somehow, and it just doesn't always take.
Okay.
So, yeah. So, but it's an option for sure.
Okay. And like midlife women, like you said, we fed our babies, some of us, and then we hit our 40s and 50s, and things just pointed south and a little bit flat and a little bit whatever. And I personally went from, I was normally kind of a B. With my kids, it was a double D. And when I hit my 40s and lower, I was a double A. And that definitely hit me because I was like, I have nothing. I literally lie on my back and there's nothing. And, my husband, bless his heart, was totally fine. But once I started HRT, all of a sudden I'm like, I'm having to buy new bras again. And as we all know, bras are not cheap. And I'm like, and now I need a second new set of bras. It just was kind of this progression. And I called my doctor. I was like, what is going on? And the way he explained it is, you have to understand the curvature and the fullness of a female breast is dictated by her estrogen. So as we are going into midlife and that estrogen is in decline, and let's be honest, it's erratic to start. So women can have bigger breasts all of a sudden, and then they go normal and whatever.
Yeah.
But eventually we lose it. And eventually we can see this sort of deflation. It doesn't happen to every woman, but it changes the direction, and how they sit on our chest wall. And a great HRT program brings back this sort of youthful vitality to the female breast. And I'm back to being a B cup. And my husband jokes, he's like, HRT was the most inexpensive boob job I've ever paid for.
So that's actually a great thing to talk about, because, what are your options? You decide you want to have an explant.
Yeah.
You're like, what's going on? And I know, I personally, I'm not ready for any kind of estrogen. Although I am trying not estrogen, I'm trying estriol.
Estriol on your face?
Just around my eye,
just
a little. I don't know what you think about that, but I'm seeing that it really helps with the fullness and the dryness around my eyes. I don't know about estradiol. I've seen people use estradiol around the eyes. I don't know. I think estriol is a little safer in my research, but that's a really good point. Working with a physician who can prescribe hormones that are catered to you and your needs is a great option, because you will see some benefit in your skin, in your breasts, in all of that, right?
Your mood and your lipid handling and your cardiovascular health and your bone health. Yeah, the list is long. Yeah.
Yeah. And you ladies probably are big fans of the Dutch test, I would assume. Do you do that?
We're fans, but not necessarily for what everyone thinks of it as in the context of midlife. It's not going to tell you what your hormone levels are. It's going to tell you what your hormone handling is. And it's going to give you a really good look on your adrenals, which is relevant to midlife as well. But it's not something that you would use to make the decision, do I need to go on HRT, or how do I dose my HRT, that sort of thing. Blood serum is always going to be the gold standard for that.
Oh, interesting. Okay. That's different than what I've learned, but that's okay. That's okay. So anything else that we didn't talk about that we missed?
Well, so I believe it was starting in November of 2021. The FDA requires like a patient kind of checklist to be used by plastic surgeons with women who want to get breast implants in, a patient like safety checklist. And I think it's supposed to kind of detail like what the potential problems could be. And I believe also somewhat new, I don't know the date, the breast implants, which come in a box, are supposed to have like a black box warning. The only thing is, women who get breast implants, they never see the box. They're basically under twilight anesthesia or some type of anesthesia at that point. So they're not going to see the box and the black box warning. And the surgeon, I would say most surgeons probably would discuss,
the risks
of implants. But I think for the most part, when women are going to that surgeon and they're at that point, they're just like, okay, all right, yeah, I'll sign it, whatever. And they're not really, really thinking about what the risks are. And they're not like hearing, well, I highly doubt that one of the risks is like, immune stimulation. You're going to get sort of like the risks for all surgeries, risk of infection.
Yes.
There's also, I believe they probably do list like risk of capsular contracture. And that is when that walling off, that scar tissue becomes like really hardened.
How can you check for that?
I think you feel it. You literally feel it. Yeah, I remember that. Like your breasts will feel hard. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so you can feel it. I would think that an ultrasound could show that too, right?
I don't know, but that's one of the kind of risks that I'm guessing that plastic surgeons will discuss, because I do remember, my plastic surgeon, again, this is 23 years ago now, saying that the capsular contracture is a definite risk. Yeah.
Okay. Good to know. Good to know. Anything else that I might?
Yeah. So with breast implants, and I was not told this. They're not forever devices. So they
that I know.
They need to be. Well, I did not know that. Well, I distinctly remember asking this. Again, 23 years ago. It's like, oh, well, they can stay in forever or whatever. And they need to be removed or replaced. So.
Yeah, isn't it like every 10 to 12 years or something?
Yeah. And but that, Sandy, that doesn't happen, because sometimes what happens is you have the money to put them in, and then I've heard from many women who say, I just don't have the money to explant. I'd love to explant. I don't have the money. And to them, I would say start saving or look into programs like Care Credit where you could finance it.
Yeah. Or they say they're fine. I have no problems with.
Right. So I will tell you, I was scheduled for my surgery. It was it was kind of height of COVID. So it had to be put off like another 6 months or so. And I was probably in denial. Like, do I really have to do this? Up until about 3 to maybe 5 months prior to my surgery, I was like, all right, I'm going to do it, but I don't really have to, but whatever. And I fought it for a few years prior. I had really thinking about it. So, and I would just say, if you're a midlife woman and you really want to go into midlife, or you're on the doorstep of midlife, maybe you're early mid-40s, you're on that doorstep and you really want to be as healthy as possible and you have breast implants, you should really think about what is your exit plan. And it occurred to me one day, like, women think about getting them in. Nobody thinks of an exit plan. It wasn't until I started to get like a little bit of diffuse pain that I started to think about removing them. And then it was like, oh my gosh, pain plus I personally felt like a fraud having them in and like being a health practitioner, and then that started my journey. And even through that, I still was in denial. So
Maria, am I a fraud because I do a little Botox and I'm a health practitioner?
no, that's up for
You know what?
you. That's an individual journey. Am I a fraud because I color my hair and
Listen, I can move everything, so I'm still good. I'm not doing too much.
Yeah,
But
that's an individual journey. And for me, I just did not feel right, and it just really started to hang on my shoulders.
it's interesting because even now as I'm aging, I feel like I am, and it's not, how you hear some women, although, listen, there's sometimes you go, oh my God, like, what are they thinking? Like Madonna, right? And like, but I'm pretty much like, I don't judge. Everybody has the choice to age the way that they want to age.
Yes.
And my role is to educate.
Yes.
Right? Like if I read some giant study that lasers could do something systemically and hurt me, then I'd be like, okay, I'm out. I'm not doing it anymore.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Right? Because I want to keep feeling good. Right?
Yep.
It's not, looking good is great, but feeling good is better. Right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So anything else that you'd like to close off? We're just over an hour. I would love for you to tell everyone where to find you and work with you and absorb all this knowledge that you guys have.
I want to leave people with one thing, because I do get this question a lot, and that is, well, how do I find a surgeon? I found it through, I went into like Facebook groups function, and I put breast implant illness. You can use that terminology for searching explant group, something like that. And then I came up with like a New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania group dedicated to talking about breast explant. And there was like 2 or 3 names that kept coming up. This doctor, this doctor, this doctor. I called doctor, I interviewed him, and I went through with it. So
that's great.
Great way. And then there's a breast implant illness healing by Nicole group that might be a website, not a Facebook group. So, just use the power of the internet, and then you interview the doctor. Yeah.
That's great advice. Thank you.
Sure.
And where can we find you, ladies? Kristen, do you want to give your handle and all that information?
Sure. We are very active on Instagram. We try and be very education forward. So we find a lot of women will kind of drop in and be like asking questions in DMs, and Maria will reply with, please scroll through our feed, because we do truly try and provide substantive information there that can help women. That is at Wise and Well. If you put that in, you'll see a little picture of the 2 of us. So you'll know that's who we are. And then we have a really active community in a alternative platform called Mighty Networks.
Mm-hmm.
You can find that in our bio link in Instagram. We kind of have everything there, but in there, we just try and do deeper dives. So we share with women, product information that we really like, but really try and give more meaty discussion in there, research papers. We just recently wrote one on colostrum and gut health. We've got a whole series on lipids. We've got things in there on thyroid classes, all sorts of things to sort of just help women find some information and have a good discussion. So
that's great. Well, thank you, ladies, for all your knowledge and all of your education. I love what you're doing.
Thank you
for having us.
Thank you for doing this.
Yeah.
Great talk. Great talk.
Yeah.
Okay, I pressed stop on the audio. That was really good.
It was a great discussion. Thank you.
I think it was really good.
Yeah.
I'm going to just make sure I save this right away. I've done that before where I'm like, oh my God, did I not save it? And then lost the audio. And the audio on Zoom and on, and unless you have a separate audio platform, it's just never as good. Do you guys have a podcast?
We don't.
You should. It's like, honestly, I think you definitely, the banter back and forth is really good.
We are going to have a practitioner mentorship. And then after we do that, we're going to write a book. And then maybe after we do that, we'll do a podcast.
I know. You know what? It's a lot. And that's why I've chosen, I actually haven't